How's it going, guys? My name is Zach with the Movie Castle, and today I'm really excited because we're going to be talking about Amityville II, The Possession. This came out in 1982, was directed by Damiano Damiani, and stars Jack Manger, Diane Franklin, James Olson, and Burt Young. It was also based on the novel Murder in Amityville by Hans Holzer. And there's one thing I want to say, right off the bat about this movie. This movie is one of the most underrated horror films of all time. And if you guys know me, you know I don't throw around stuff like that. I don't say it flippantly. For real, this movie is really, really good, and it's amazing how few people know or talk about it. We have some really good, interesting, flawed characters in this movie, a dysfunctional family, and when you get the titular possession, it's going to drive everything to its crisis. You really get pulled in with these characters, and there's some really good drama in here. When I got into that extended final act, I really just couldn't put the movie down. It was really, really good. But of course, you have the scares. This movie does the scares so well. There's some really good camera work in here, including a point-of-view camera from the Amityville demon, and when you see it walk around the house late at night and then something moves, or when it's harassing one of the characters, floating around this person, why they don't see it but they definitely feel it. You really do feel the tension in that scene. The camera work is really cool, and there's so many times it sets up these really good scare gags. And as the movie goes on, and in particular when we get to the left alone at home scene, we do get some big over-the-top moments. There's some really fun special effects in here, and I have to say, if you guys like things like Evil Dead, there is definitely some Evil Dead influence in Amityville 2. And yeah, I really do love the special effects work. As I hinted at earlier, the movie kind of has this extended final act to it. You know, you get the possession sequence, and then from there on out, it kind of triples down. Possession, rest of the family, and then this extended sequence with the priest at the end. Overall, this movie has a good bit of weight, and I guess I'll say it right now, I think this is probably better than the first one. In fact, going back and watching the first one after this would probably add more weight to the first, just seeing what all they went through. This is a prequel to the original, but that being said, even though you know in general where things are gonna go, it still did tell its own really original story, and it really kept me on the hook, again, in spite of being a prequel. And yeah, this movie is one of the biggest hidden gems in horror movie history, and I know a lot of horror nerds know about this, and I think James Wan probably saw this. This was probably big inspiration for the Conjuring movies, but it's crazy how few people talk about Amityville 2. I guess a lot of people assume it's just, one of those Amityville sequels, one of those sequels to the big one, but no, for real, if you haven't seen any of the Amityville sequels, at least check out part 2. But that being said, I do want to talk a bit about the movie. I'm not going to be doing any major spoilers, but I do want to say my piece on a few plot points, break down and analyze a few things, and I think I'll focus primarily on setup. But from here on out, let's take a bit of a deeper dive. We open up with the Montanelli family moving into the Amityville house. This is a few years before the first movie, and yeah, one of the flaws with this film is it doesn't really make itself clear that it's a prequel. I remember the first time I watched it, it took me till almost the end to realize that this movie came before, and to be fair, there's no real indication at the beginning. There's no big title card explaining it, and these are also the Montanellis, not the DeFeos. I think I would have got it if they kept them as the DeFeos, but they changed the name to Montanelli, I guess so they wouldn't get sued or something. So yeah, Ronald DeFeo Jr. is now Sonny Montanelli, but we get a good look at the family really early on. They arrive in 3 cars, cars, Sonny Montanelli is driving his own car, and he stopped for cigarettes, and the father yells at him, and not for smoking, this is in the 70s, I guess no one cared. He yelled at him because doing that pullover caused him to kind of abandon his mother, and he's like, she knows the way, I don't have to guide. And he yells like, oh, you think you're a big man, you have to learn your responsibilities. And we see right off the bat that there's this rivalry between the father and the son. And we get this interesting portrait where, like, the son really does love his family, but at the same time he feels a bit like he's bullied out of it. He feels a bit disconnected. And it's this drama that the demon's going to use to worm his way in. He'll start hearing these voices. Oh, your family really is bad people. Why are you still here? Maybe you need to take drastic actions. And the way that it preys upon Sonny, but using it through these real family conflicts, is a really, really good example. And it's something that we see more and more in movies nowadays. Naturally, rounding out the rest of the family, we of course have the dad. He's one of those guys that's perpetually angry, perpetually upset, and he's going to yell whenever anything bad happens, and it's not always going to be the family's fault. The demon learns quite quickly that if it does something, that will disrupt the humans, but this guy is only going to make that worse. Take a little problem and through your anger make it into a bigger one. Make everything a living hell for everybody. We also have the mother, and naturally she's not in a good spot here, but she does take some time to stand up for herself and try to call him on these things. So yeah, we get those two fighting as well, and then we actually, in contrast to that, get the two younger siblings who seem completely oblivious to all this. They'll run around, they'll have fun, and they're not really realizing how much their world is on the edge of crumbling. But yeah, the two little kids, being fun kids and getting some jokes in there, they do provide a sense of energy, and you're like, oh, I hope nothing terrible happens to them, but we are watching an Amityville prequel, so don't know about that. Also, with the heart, you do have the sister. The sister is a really nice younger sister. She's older than the other two, but she and Sonny are good friends. They play off each other really well, and she seems to be the biggest force holding Sonny to the family, and you think maybe if she wasn't there, he might have just left a long time ago, and the two do have a really friendly relationship. Again, hope nothing terrible happens to her, and that's going to be something the demon preys upon in a really dark way. We actually get this one scene fairly early on where the demon wakes everyone in the house up by knocking on the door, and then while everyone's up, it starts terrorizing the kids in this really cool effect with the paint set. But then you get dad going nuts blaming the kids, the mom trying to defend the kids, the other two siblings waking up in all this commotion, and all hell really breaking loose in the house just because everyone's fighting. I don't want to say how this scene ends, but it is a really, like, peak dramatic moment. It gets super, super intense, and then cut to the next day and everyone's trying to just go on with their life. So we have that high, but we're a family, we're trying to stick together, we're just going to ignore that. And I think that is a really interesting situation, the tension it puts these characters in. So we have all these characters here, we have the drama being forced to its crisis, and we have really interesting moments with the demon. There's this really cool idea where they find like a hidden basement room and it's all muddy and dripping with water, but there's this sequence where the demon comes out of that place through the camera's point of view, and then we get to see it like sneak down the hallway. We get to know like the layout of the room. We really feel like we're in the house with this longer shot, and then like it reacts to the crucifix on the wall, and then every now and then a few things are gonna start flying unexpectedly. There's some showmanship to the scares, and then we get to this scene where Sonny's left alone at home, and we get to see him go all throughout the house from the basement to the attic in a really uncomfortable shot where the point of view camera is leaning over him and he's freaking out, but he can't see what's causing him to freak out. We do, as I said earlier, get some fun special effects, and they're always used in this really cool and unexpected way, but again with a sense of showmanship. And towards the end of that Home Alone sequence, we are going to get some bigger moments, and again, a good bit of body horror, and I feel like a few Evil Dead callbacks as well. Naturally, things get forced to the crisis. We get some really dark moments, and with a good extended finale for this one, again, lots and lots of weight behind it. The first time I watched it, I thought it did go on a little bit long, especially towards the end. We shift gears and we're focusing primarily on this priest, but the priest is a really interesting character. The way he wants to do something, but things like the church and being official and doing things the right way start to keep him from that, and then he starts to blame himself for things that aren't necessarily his fault. And yeah, that's sort of a thing, is blaming yourself for something that might not necessarily be your fault. We have a lot of people that probably think that in the household when relationships get messy there, and we of course get the priest thinking that, and we get this extended final act where he's trying to fix everything, or at least lay these things to bed, and we get him wanting some form of redemption. It's really, really interesting, and again, packs more of a wallop and a lot more unexpectedness than you would probably expect from a prequel. As I said at the top, it's really strange that more people don't talk about this. It might just be that because the first one's a classic, you kind of go, oh, a sequel, it's probably bad. It's not, but I kind of think a lot of people thought that. And it also didn't help things that there was a really terrible Siskel and Ebert review for this. I forget which one he is, but the really tall one, he just spent most of the review complaining that at one point the priest threw up and he thought it was disgusting. Siskel and Ebert didn't know anything about horror. They had some really dumb takes, but they had essentially a monopoly on video reviews back in the day, and I really wish they got another guy to cover horror movies for them, because they did big harm to the genre, and are probably a large chunk of the reason this didn't do too well. Okay, there is one other thing. There is a scene in here, the "he did it to make God mad" scene, the photography scene. Yeah, that is one of the most uncomfortable moments in horror movie history, and that does make it a little bit hard to recommend. Some people probably only remember that one scene from this whole movie. It's part that does force the drama to its crisis and really shakes things up in a kind of messed up way. But again, yeah, it's not going to be for everybody, and it does make you think a little bit before you recommend this one. Just know that things get kinda dark in here. Overall though, I say, if you haven't seen it, check it out. Amityville II is so super underrated, and I wish it got the same respect as the first one did. Honestly, I think it's better, and it deserves to be looked at in a much more favorable light. For real, check it out. Solid recommendation from me. Anyway, to everyone who's watched so far, thank you for watching. To everyone who's liked and subscribed, thank you. You really are helping the channel out. I'll leave a relevant playlist on the bottom. This should be my Amityville playlist. I have the first one reviewed in there, and I'm going to be working my way through the official series this year. There's also a bunch of the unofficial ones in there if you want to check out my review for those. Anyway, have a good day. I'll see you guys again very soon. Playlist here. Have a good day now.